The Dallas Cowboys will have a new defensive coordinator in 2026. Let's take a deep dive on the top three candidates next.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us the #1 sports podcast network. And today's episode is presented by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. He is Landon McCool. And on today's show, we're taking a look at three of the top defensive coordinator candidates for the Dallas Cowboys now that we officially know that they have an opening. And I want to start with Brian Flores. And this has been the name that has been floated around by NFL insiders for a couple weeks now. Now, he's technically with the Vikings still. I don't think his contract has run up yet. He's interviewing for head coaching jobs. His contract will expire this offseason. But in case you aren't that familiar with Flores, Landon, what could he bring to the table?
He's a very unique kind of coach, right? He's a very aggressive. He has a very interesting history. He comes from the Bill Belichick tree, and he came down into the ranks in New England, and started out as a scout, if I'm not mistaken, a personnel scout, and then was brought in as a defensive assistant, made his way to defensive coordinator. He actually only has, I think, 6 years as a defensive play caller, 3 as a defensive coordinator, and 3 as a defensive play calling head coach when he was with Miami. But in his time that he's been a play caller, he's just kind of innovated a lot of different things, and he's called defenses in a very kind of unique way. He's very aggressive. But I think what's kind of unique is that he runs these kind of aggressive attacking schemes behind open field coverage. So it's very just hard to prepare for, because it's kind of unlike a lot of defenses that get run, and it's all sort of the details are what matter here, right? Like how it's coached, the rules that are applied in their coverages, and that sort of thing. And it just allows them to play with a level of aggression that is just almost second to none in the NFL, maybe from peak Todd Bowles, like back in the day, right? Like, so yeah. It's really interesting stuff.
Well, and what's fascinating about Flores is this year, 2025, was the first year that his defenses that he's coached ever finished inside of the top 15 in yards allowed. And honestly, it makes sense, right? Because what happens in a lot of these, defenses is they'll give up some yards, they'll give up some explosive plays, but they're generally pretty good at keeping points down. They were 7th in points allowed this year, 5th in points allowed last year. In 2020 with Miami, they were 6th. Like, he does a pretty good job of slowing down the scoring. And I think if you're a Cowboy fan, the reason why I think he's so appealing is you have a flying, high scoring offense. You want somebody on defense that's going to be aggressive, either getting turnovers, getting sacks, or, hey, if you're going to give up points, give them up fast so your offense can get back on the field. There was too many times this year where Matt Eberflus played this bend but don't break, and teams would have these 8, 9, 10 play drives that would take up 6 minutes of the clock, and then they would score anyways. And you're not really accomplishing anything by doing that.
Yeah, and here's the other thing too is that in the sense that Bill Belichick kind of used to run these defenses with not a lot of, let's say, athletic superstars necessarily. I mean, obviously they had Vince Wilfork and they had athletic freaks. I mean, every NFL team has them. But what the calling card of Belichick defenses was they were smart. Right, they had heady players that ran a complicated scheme. They understood the scheme very, very well and played it to that high level. So what does that mean? That means that kind of procuring players like that is a lot easier than going out and having to find the top athletes at every single position and try to build this defense in the Houston way. The downside to this is that it takes a while to learn a defense like that, right? So the installation may not be instantaneous. The returns that you get from a Brian Flores defense may not be immediate as you start to kind of build this defense from the ground up. And there is a lot more of a build that probably would have to happen with this defense versus a Jim Schwartz and Raheem Morris situation. So, so that's just something to kind of, bake into your calculus. But having said that, I do think that, if you're talking about, and I've said this before, if you're talking about the long-term health of the Dallas Cowboys defense, if you can find a way to pry him away from his current situation, if he doesn't get a head coaching job, I think Brian Flores is the best candidate.
I think one of the reasons why we really like the Mike Zimmer hire is because you felt like you were getting somebody who gave you a coaching, like an X and O's advantage every single week. Now that defense started out really poor, and then you had all the injuries with DeMarcus Lawrence and Micah Parsons. But by the end of the year, they were really starting to come on, right? And I feel like with Brian Flores, you might get that similar trajectory, and you're also getting somebody who is at the very top of his craft. But the reason he's available, and I was listening to Ryan Fitzpatrick talk about him today, who was the quarterback in Miami, is that he's kind of burned a lot of bridges over the course coaching career. And I think there are some people that he rubs the wrong way. I think he can be very abrasive. I mean, honestly, it's not that different than Bill Belichick, who can be very abrasive and kind of went through a lot of different coaches during his time. So that's part of the deal here, and that's why he might be available. At the same time, it's worth it if you can get one of the best defensive coordinators in the league.
Yeah, and I don't want to get too far into this because, but there was a lawsuit that Brian Flores was involved in which, he revealed some information that was a private conversation between him and the owner. And to me, that I know that Jerry Jones was very heavily involved because it was involving the NFL as overall. And so to me, I assumed that would kind of rule him out, Jerry Jones and the Cowboys, out of any kind of Brian Flores conversation. But the fact is that we've heard from multiple sources that are very tied into the Cowboys that they potentially could be some interest here. So I think it was fascinating to hear that, and it just shows you like how good a defensive coordinator he is that Jerry Jones, of all people, would be willing to look past something like that and still consider him a candidate.
The last thing here is that one of the things that Flores really likes is having good defensive tackles. And that's why Minnesota went out this offseason and spent a bunch of money on some defensive tackles, including Jonathan Allen, to kind of help stop the run. Because if you're going to be doing a lot of this amoeba defense and guys moving all around, you do need these defensive tackles that can get up the field, they can take on blocks, that can stop the run. And that's where I do think Dallas fits in really well with Osa Odighizuwa, Kenny Clark, and obviously Quinnen Williams, not Quentin Williams, as Jerry Jones called him about 5 times on Wednesday. But I think,
Did you really?
Yeah, I mean, he really did. Quentin Williams I do think the personnel, what they currently have on the roster, would make some sense. And like, I even think guys like DeMarvion Overshown, who's a really good blitzer, and Malik Hooker, who is incredibly smart, those guys would fit into this defense very, very well right away.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it makes a ton of sense. The only concerns that we came up with are kind of, like I said, the kind of learning curve stuff, and that was after having a conversation with Cody over at Match Quarters. So, and I think he has a valid point, right? Like it's not as quick a fix, I think, as maybe some of these other guys that come from a tree that's very similar to what the Cowboys have played in most recent years. Maybe they would pick it up a little bit quicker. But the truth of the matter is that the Cowboys are doing kind of a rebuild on their defense anyways. Why not just kind of fold this into that process? The question still remains: if Flores becomes a defensive coordinator, how quickly could he get this defense up to snuff to the point where they would be able to be competitive this year? That's what you would hope for.
All right, let's talk about another candidate that could be available and right now is available, and that's Jim Schwartz of the Cleveland Browns. You might remember him when he was the defensive coordinator with Philadelphia or the head coach of the Lions. Let's talk about his fit in Dallas next. This episode is brought to you by Rocket Money. Let's be real. Managing your finances can feel overwhelming between subscriptions that you forgot about, bills that keep going up, and trying to figure out where all your money is actually going each month. It's easy to feel like you're losing control. And who has time to track every transaction or hunt down every hidden fee? But that's where Rocket Money comes in, the personal finance app that helps you take control. It finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills so that you can grow your savings. I was shocked when I started using Rocket Money, how much money we were wasting on subscriptions that we weren't even using. And Rocket Money helped us save easily $80 to $85 a month just on those subscriptions alone. So let Rocket Money help you reach your financial goals faster. Join rocketmoney.com/locked-on. That's rocketmoney.com/locked-on. rocketmoney.com/locked-on. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The wild card round of the NFL playoffs are here, and FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action, because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the app. In each game day, you're going to be loaded up with multiple profit boosts that you can apply to the bets that you like most. Like for me, I love Pittsburgh at home getting 3.5 points. Mike Tomlin has not lost at home on a Monday Night Football. I think he's 22-0 his last 22 games. That's my favorite bet. And with FanDuel Profit Boost, you can get an even bigger payout. You make your picks, then you apply your Profit Boost to go after it, even bigger payouts while the playoffs get rolling. So visit FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your Profit Boost pack for every NFL playoff game day. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen every single day. If you haven't done so already, go check out the Everydayer Club. You're going to get access to ad-free audio of this podcast. You're going to get an invite to a members-only Locked On Everydayer Club Discord server, which includes a group chat just for listeners of the show. So go to lockedoncowboys.supercast.com or tap the link in the show notes to learn more. All right, Lane, let's talk about Jim Schwartz. He's easily the oldest candidate that we're probably going to talk about over the next couple of weeks. He's 59. He'll be 60 when the season kicks off. Man, his resume is really good.
Yeah, I mean, he's just been a defensive calling fool. I mean, this is one of those guys who kind of fits the mold of what Jerry Jones is looking for in a defensive coordinator traditionally, right? Like a long-term, former head coach who's been a defensive coordinator in the NFL for 30 plus years. He has a ton of different experience. His resume is positive too. It's not like he's got a bunch of necessarily a bunch of middling defenses. I mean, he has at certain points when he was with Tennessee in the bad years, but when he's had talent on his defense, he's been really, really good. And for, you don't have to be a very old Cowboy fan to remember his defense is terrorizing you at certain points during the middle parts of the 2010s and the later. So yeah, I think he's a guy that that has, even in Cleveland, obviously Myles Garrett is one thing, but there's been times when the talent has been up and down because of injuries, because of whatever. And he's always seemingly produced a defense that has been a terror to go against. So yeah, I think if you're looking for the more kind of steady wheel route, return to more 4-3 with a little bit of a tweak with the way he plays the defensive ends and that kind of wide 9 stance, I think Schwartz kind of provides a little bit of everything, right? He's got some experience. He's a head coach. He's got some familiarity in the fact that kind of how he plays some parts of his fronts, but then a little bit of a twist on it that gives you something new as well.
One of the things I really like about Jim Schwartz, we'll get into his scheme and the fit here in a little bit, is there's a certain attitude and toughness about him that I really, really like. And honestly, the Cowboys just have not really had that. Zimmer had that, but it was hard to, it was a really weird year for the Cowboys in 2024. But there is a toughness that I would like to see this Cowboys defense has. I think Brian Flores has it. I think Jim Schwartz has it. And I do think that could be really, I think the Cowboys could really use that. The other part of it is I think a good sign of a defensive coordinator is when you have non-superstar players who come in and have some of the best seasons of their career. And I'll give you some examples for this year. Devin Bush, who was a cast-off from Pittsburgh, who bounced around the league over the last couple of years. He was a guy that was signing veteran minimum contracts, and he's like a borderline all-pro linebacker for them this year. Malik Collins, same way. I think he's like
Yeah.
in year 10 at this point.
Yeah.
Bounced around to, I don't even know how many teams over the last couple of years. He was phenomenal. And maybe that's the Myles Garrett effect. Like I'll accept that as a reasoning as well. But I don't think it's a coincidence that a lot of these guys go to Jim Schwartz and suddenly they get a whole lot better. And that's the complete opposite of what happened to Matt Eberflus this year.
Yeah, and I think, you know, part of the twist and the element of putting these guys in these wide nine stances is that it puts these edges into a position in which they can attack the tackles in a new way, and then that's, you know, kind of difficult to prepare to. And I think that that's the sort of philosophy that kind of exudes out to the rest of his defense as well. He's very keen, and look, all these defensive coordinators talk about this, but you know, this is how he does it. He's very keen on putting guys into position to make plays, right? To put them into position to make plays. He has body types that he likes in certain, you know, spots, but he also is able to work with whatever is there, seemingly. So yeah, I mean, again, a guy that you feel like has, you know, it's funny that Myles Garrett has been his defensive end for this whole time, because to me, before he was with Cleveland, I always felt like what I knew about Jim Schwartz was that he could take any of these undersized, like, you know, defensive ends and to turn them into superstars. Like, you think about all the guys that the Philadelphia used to just run through on the outside of that wide nine who couldn't go off and do anything else anywhere else. But with Jim Schwartz, we're putting up 9-10 sacks, right? Then he goes to Cleveland, and Myles Garrett, you know, is obviously Myles Garrett. But that's where I think he is really interesting, is like, you know, much like we had thought that Eberflus could do for linebackers last year. You feel like maybe Jim Schwartz has some history doing that for maybe undersized defensive ends.
And here's another reason, if you want to believe in Jim Schwartz, his track record against the Shanahans and the McVays, you know, that style of offense, like the Kubiaks, is unbelievable. And honestly, I would put his resume against those coaches up against any other coach in the league. Like, he's had a ton of success stopping those offenses. And frankly, Landon, like, if the Cowboys want to ever come out of the NFC or be contenders, you're going to have to compete with the Rams, the 49ers, Seattle right now, who has got Clint Kubiak. You've got LaFleur in Green Bay, who runs a similar offense.
That's right.
You might as well go out and get the best guy at stopping those coaches.
Well, and who's another guy who runs another Shanahan's tree? It was Stefanski, right?
Yeah.
That's why he went out and hired Jim Schwartz as his defensive coordinator. Stefanski was one of the best X's and O's guys in that tree. He knew who was stopping him, so he went to go out and get him as his defensive coordinator. Kept him for the entire length of his tenure there at Cleveland. So
we should mention the reason why Schwartz could be an option for the Cowboys is because the Browns fired Kevin Stefanski, and usually that means the rest of the coaching staff will leave. Now, we have heard from Jimmy Haslam, the Browns owner, that they would like to keep Jim Schwartz. I think he's even interviewing for the head coaching job, but I won't be surprised if they go out and get somebody else, and that means that Schwartz is available to look for deals. Maybe he wants a new challenge, and maybe the Cowboys would be that right spot for him.
Yeah, and it's an interesting thing, like you mentioned, this isn't a case where this guy got fired from his previous job. He's being let go, and he's not even being let go. They would like to retain him, but you know, there is this opportunity for him to come to the Cowboys if, you know, the situation works out for them.
Yeah.
And if Cleveland goes another route for a head coach, who maybe they want to hire his own defensive coordinator.
If they go out and get like Chris Shula, who is the defensive coordinator of the Rams, I believe that's somebody that they are planning on interviewing. He's going to want to have his own style, and that means that Schwartz probably is going to look elsewhere. So if he is available, and it sounds like he will be, this is one of the very best candidates out there. You're going to have a hard time doing better than Jim Schwartz. I think he fits kind of what the Cowboys want in a defensive coordinator. His attitude fits. I think the personnel fits. You have three awesome defensive tackles that you really need to have if you're going to have your ends split out so wide. Exactly. That's right. I think the personnel does fit here well.
I agree. And I think this is kind of the thing we were talking about when we talk about like what a great candidate pool this is. Like, Schwartz to me is like a really great backstop to some of the other incredible guys that are available. But Jim Schwartz himself, like if you came out of this with Jim Schwartz, that's a standing triple in my mind. Like, I mean, it really is like a really good pick. Maybe it's not the home run, but but even if it's not, you're going
I'll
to have
take
a
it.
really improved defense. And maybe Jim Schwartz could be the guy that gets the defense up the fastest just
Bingo.
because of all the experience that he has.
Absolutely. All right, let's talk about another name, Raheem Morris, who was fired from the Falcons. He's had a bunch of head coaching interviews. Could he be the next defensive coordinator in Dallas? We'll get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Ultimate QB. The draft picks positions are set. We know that the Cowboys are drafting 12th, and so many teams are looking for a franchise quarterback. We obviously hope that a bunch of them go before the Cowboys pick. But if you've ever wished that you could become a pro quarterback, getting drafted first overall by, let's say, the Cowboys, if they've ever had that pick, well, now you can. There's a mobile game just for you called Ultimate QB Football Legend. In this game, you step into the cleats of a number one draft pick quarterback, and it's your job to lead your team to greatness, to help turn a failing franchise into a dynasty. This is the number one QB career mode game on the market right now, and it introduces the most realistic environment with full career control. You'll deal with the ups and downs of a quarterback career, from rookie nerves to playoff trauma and so much more. Ultimate QB is totally free to play, has no ads, and works 100% offline. Perfect when you just want to sneak in a game or two on the go. So head over to ultimate-qb.com. That's ultimate-qb.com, or search for Ultimate QB in your app store. And we've got something special for you guys. Use the promo code Locked On in the game store to get a free boost at the start of your career. Ultimate QB, football legend, QB1. It's your legacy. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We are discussing some coordinator candidates for the Cowboys on defense. And let's go over to Raheem Morris, who was let go by the Falcons. This is somebody who's been a head coach twice. I have some major doubts that he'll ever get another head coaching job, which means he is somebody that could be a defensive coordinator for the next several years. Does he make sense for Dallas?
He's really interesting, right? Like it's hard to get a read on him. Like he had kind of an interesting rise to becoming a head coach. I mean, frankly, if I'm not mistaken, he became a head coach as he became a play caller, or before he became a play caller. So it's only after having been head coach from Tampa. I think he started his play calling in Atlanta, if I'm not mistaken. Or no, I'm sorry. It started because he's had a lot of movement, right? He was with Tampa, he was with Atlanta, then he was with the Rams, and then he was back with Atlanta, right? So I actually think it started when he became the defensive coordinator in Atlanta, and then really kind of developed his few years with the Rams, and that's really where you're kind of pulling your opinion of him as a play caller, I would say. And then, of course, it continued in Atlanta as well. He's interesting in the sense that he's kind of is a little bit of what we talked about with Schwartz, where he's a little bit of everything because he has been around for a little while. He's been around in the NFL for 27 years. But like I mentioned, only a few as a play caller. And I think the thing that kind of concerns you a little bit is that, I just don't know that he was ever like so awe-inspiring as I don't think he got his head coaching job, either of them, by being an elite play caller.
No, I agree.
Like I think he's a good football coach, and I don't think he knows how to identify with players and connect with players. And I think he's inspiring, and he's a good leader of men. And I think there's a CEO aspect to his head coaching. But he didn't get those jobs because of a propensity to like create, smothering defenses that dominate the league. I think if anything, it's just that he's a smart head ball coach who I think inspired a lot of thoughts in the people beneath him. And I think that that's going to be helpful in the sense that I think he will probably, if he gets the defensive coordinator job, he'll probably bring with him a lot of great assistants because he has a lot of connections to the league and he's coached with a lot of people that really like coaching with him. But he himself, as a scheme designer, as an X's and O's guy, I don't really know what to think about where he is on the kind of pantheon of the rest of these guys.
Well, it's hard because of all the time for him coaching as a head coach or as a defensive coordinator, his defenses have finished inside the top 14 once, and that was 2010 with Tampa Bay. So you're not getting someone with like the track record of Brian Flores or Jim Schwartz. But one of the things I will say is he, for the most part, has had a lot of average defenses, and that's with varying levels of talent. And maybe that's the appeal for the Cowboys is they're not going to have elite level talent on defense. I mean, it would be great if they did. It's going to be probably a very mixed bag. But if he's somebody that you feel really good about getting to a standard of like, hey, we want to be competent on defense, maybe his style and the way that he connects with players and his relationships does help you get there the fastest. We talked about Jim Schwartz maybe having the fastest scheme to get up and running, but maybe Raheem Morris is the guy that you bring in and helps you get to league average quicker than the other two.
Yeah, I mean, and the other thing too that kind of insert into this is that he also kind of checks a little bit of the box of being, despite having been in the league for so long, he's worked with a lot of kind of younger coaches who have sewn in a lot of interesting scheme stuff. Obviously, he spent 3 years recently as a defensive coordinator for a guy like Sean McVay, and you're not going to like spend time around Sean McVay and not kind of have some of those principles rub off on you and understanding how a modern offense works and how to attack a modern offense. So I think that there's aspects about this that are interesting, that are obviously, make him an interesting candidate. I just think that for the lay person, for the people looking on the outside in, it's tough for us to kind of know what to hang our hats on here, right? Because it just feels like he's got a lot of experience as a coach, but not a ton of experience as a defensive coordinator, which is obviously what you're hiring to be.
Yeah, I think I feel better about Flores and Schwartz, but I'm not opposed to Raheem Morris. I mean, everybody talked to about Raheem Morris just cannot say enough great things about him. And the Falcons players were really upset when he left. So maybe this is a kind of like a Dan Quinn situation where you get him in to just focus on defense, where he's calling the plays. He brings in a really great staff. And honestly, that was one of Dan Quinn's best traits is go back and look at those staffs that Dan Quinn had in 2021 and 22, like with Auden Dirty and Al Harris and the linebacker guys that they had. Like they had really qualified people. If Raheem Morris can do that better than the other two, maybe he should be the top option here.
Yeah, and that's obviously, I think, one of the big appeals with Raheem Morris is that he's almost kind of a CEO type of defensive coordinator a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see if he gets an interview and what it all pans out.
All right, that is it for today's show. We'd like to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every single day. If you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you. Get Locked On Cowboys ad-free, plus members-only Discord server access, and so much more. Head over to lockedoncowboys.supercast.com to join the club. And for those of you on video, we can send you the first ever 24/7 national NBA YouTube channel. And on audio, make your second listen the Locked On NFL podcast. Follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosher, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.